Hey guys, still here. Welcome back to Wargame, Ashen Shadows. We're again looking at the Ashen Shadows mod, and this time it's France's turn. Now, France and India were very close. I checked this morning, France got 66 votes and India 65, so by the current stance of it, India is next on the list. If you want to impact what country I review next, be sure to click through the description, click on the link where it says poll, and then vote or upvote the comment of your country of choice. That's the way that these things get sorted. On to France. This deck or this nation always used to have a run and gun style. Um, if you want to really bring in the French meme again, it's going to be run and retreat, but I prefer hit and run. And in this mod, that is still very much true, which makes for some really interesting tactics that you can use with this deck. So let's have a look. Logistics. Not too many changes here. The Commando Infantry, or Command Infantry really, does have a new toy to play with. This is the VBMR Griffon, or Griffon I suppose you should pronounce that. Again, my French is not that good. I had in high school for 6 years, but, well, let's just say it was never my strong suit. Anyway, this transport here comes equipped with your standard machine gun, as you would expect from a vehicle like this, but it also carries the APS. It's not particularly survivable, a bit of armor, 4 charges of the APS. I wouldn't really bring in Commando Infantry in a transport like that. I'd say save the Griffon for something else, like your actual infantry. The VAP 2013 has been changed, then we have the Cayman and the Panther. As for the other command options, you have your standard command transport, your command truck, your command jeep. You have the VAB, slightly heavily armored the way it used to be, also amphibious in case you want to float these things in. That's an opportunity that you now have. And we have the command tank, the AMX-40 CNE. Pretty heavily armored, an okay gun on it for 16 AP. And in case you saw my China review from yesterday, let me bring up China. I'm not sure, I don't think it's been changed yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's working on it. If you compare at the moment the ZZZ 59-1 with the AMX-40, you're going to see that the 59 is vastly better. But this gun is going to change. That's going to happen in the next patch. So make sure you keep updating your game, especially if you want to do this thing multiplayer with other people playing this mod, as they are most likely running the most recent version of the mod. Other than that, command tank, there really aren't too many interesting units here. So let's move on to infantry. Now, the French apparently still really like their Milans. Their range at 2450 in this particular game mode, or this particular meta with all of these APS systems and pretty long range guns, I'd say the Milan 2 is outdated. It's not surprising because the game pretty much stretches till 2015, 2016, and this is a weapon that was introduced in 1984. It still has quite a bit of AP, so you can definitely do damage to enemy armor, but the chances of your team making it out alive while they're doing that are not great. Now they do come with a new transport, the VBCI. Don't mind the unit model, let's just suppose it's a French unit. Quite a bit of frontal armor. As opposed to what I would be expecting from a vehicle like this, it's not amphibious. That's unfortunate. Maybe that's something that could be added. I'm not familiar with this particular vehicle, so I'm not sure what the thinking behind it is. But what it comes equipped with is the GAT M811, 25mm autocannon, nice rate of fire, very good accuracy, including on the move. And that seems to be a trend for some of these French units. Their maneuverability is very good, and their stabilizers, with the exception of some of the AMX tanks, are quite good. Now, if this is not enough firepower for you, the VBCI, you can go for the VBCI Series 2. This thing has a 40mm cannon, does a lot more AP, it's even more accurate. It's unfortunately not as accurate when you're moving. It does a lower rate of fire, unsurprisingly, because it's almost twice the caliber. And it has a little bit more armor, and comes equipped with an APS. So these things are quite a bit more survivable than the VBCI itself, but you're also paying a lot more for them. You're paying 32 versus just the 15 for the VBCI. Then we have the VBMR Griffon. This one, as described earlier, comes equipped with a machine gun and the APS. The 2013 I believe has not been touched. The AMX-10P hasn't been touched. Might have gotten a bit more armor, but I'm not too sure about that. And then you have the Panther and the Cayman. Now, interestingly about the Cayman, not the Panther, the Cayman comes equipped with good stealth. So if you're doing a stealthy insertion for, let's say, a recon team or a special forces team, I would say go with the NH-90 Cayman, because there's a good chance that they might not detect this helicopter. Now, from the Milan 2, we're moving on to the Milan 3. It's a slight upgrade. Its range is definitely 500 meters, or well, near enough 500 meters better. Your accuracy is slightly better, and your AP gets a boost of 4 points. Meaning that you will be able to do damage against every tank. I mean, you were able to do that anyway because it's heat. But now especially, the tanks are really going to start hurting. And with a range of 2905 meters, I'd say you're a lot safer than you were with the Milan F2. These guys got exactly the same transport options, so I don't really need to go into that. Now then they have the Vbl Mmp team. These guys are really interesting. This is the Missile Moyen Porté. Pretty much, as far as my French goes, means medium portable missile. And it does exactly that. Unfortunately, while these things are portable, the ATGM team itself, at 15 km per hour, is not really that fast to get away. These missiles are fire and forget, as opposed to the Milans, but you have slightly less range than the Milan, 2800 versus the 2905 that I showed you just a minute ago. Your accuracy is really, really good. AP, really nice. However, as with all the ATGM teams, I wonder how long these guys are going to survive. But I'd say if you have a few of these deployed around the town, or actually inside the town, of course, not around them, then you're going to have a good chance of killing off enemy vehicles as they get close. Next up, we have the Chasseur. Not too much has been changed here, with the exception that these guys now carry the P90. This means that they are unfortunately really, really inaccurate. Their accuracy is only 20%. And this means that I'm not sure how effective they're going to be in an infantry-on-infantry fight. For anti-tank, they have the Lrc F1 and the NF1. Accuracy on the NF1 is again not stellar at 20. On the ATGM, or the anti-tank weapon, is pretty good, 60, 19 AP, rate of fire is alright, but overall, I'd say you could turn the Chasseur into more spammy infantry, as opposed to just having them as a frontline unit. I don't think that that would work too well. This 20% accuracy concerns me. As for their transport options, you can make these things really expensive if you go with the VBI Series 2. I wouldn't do that. For the Chasseur, if you're going to be using them, I'd say pick the cheapest transport available to you, which in this situation would just be the trusted and reliable VAB 2013. This one comes equipped with the autocannon. Accuracy on this thing is just about as bad as the weapon that the infantry itself fires. They're fast, and they're not too expensive, but I'd be hesitant to pay 20 points for this infantry unit and this transport. Next up, Commando Marines. These guys come equipped with the MG36, which I believe is a new weapon. These guys, compared to the Chasseur, and yes, I know I'm comparing commandos to standard infantry units, these guys know how to hit stuff. 55% on your saw, 60% on your main gun, and since the caliber is a bit bigger, well, that's not strictly speaking true. These are 9mm rounds, and these are 5.56, but their rate of fire is higher, the suppression is higher, and with these guys knowing how to hit stuff, these are the guys you call when you need some other infantry taken out. Not in the least because they have the heavy tag, and with the heavy tag you can take less fire, or you take less damage from small arms fire. Still come equipped with the Apilas, pretty decent anti-tank weapon, short range, 630 meters. But then again, I'd say you take these guys if you want enemy infantry driven from a town. Next up is the, I'm going to have a stab at this, the Cuirassier. Come equipped with the FAMAS, again the Lrc F1 that we just saw on the Commando Marines, and the NF1, not the MG36. These guys are regular trained troops. And I'd say they're somewhere between the Chasseurs on the one end and maybe the Legionnaires on the other. And of course, the Commando Marines occupy the far end of the spectrum as far as anti-infantry capability goes. The FAMAS is more accurate than the P90. The NF1 still sits at 20%, and the LRAC F1, as mentioned, is an okay anti-tank weapon. However, when you compare it to the Appalachian, you can see that it is not as good. The accuracy on the Appalachian is slightly worse, but your AP on the Appalachian is 4 points better, which in this mod definitely makes it quite a significant difference. And with the heavy tag, as mentioned, you take less damage. Next, we have the FAR. I tried looking up the abbreviation for this, but I just couldn't find it. I don't really know what this stands for. What I can tell you is that these guys are shock trained. They still have the LRAC F1, they have the AA52. Now this is an important difference, because with the AA52 you can use it inside the same building, as opposed to what the Cuirassiers have. They have a static weapon, the NF1, which means it cannot be used in the same building. So if you have the Cuirassier in a building, make sure you engage them inside the same building with your own infantry, because they will not be able to put up too much of a fight as they're only using the FAMAS. The FAR, or the FAR, don't. They're going to use the SG542 as well as the AA52. And these guys, again, know how to hit stuff. 60% accuracy. Then we have the Legion, also known as the Legionnaire, and the Legionnaire Pioneer, pretty much pioneers. The difference between these guys is that the standard Legionnaires have a shorter range anti-tank solution. They're quite a bit cheaper as well. You're paying 14 points versus 25. And you're paying 25 mostly for the Erics. The Erics does a lot of damage, 26 versus 23, but your range is better. Unfortunately, this is going to be in range of just about every autocannon and main gun that's in the game. So yes, you have a pretty good chance of immediately taking out an enemy transport, but you're going to take a lot of fire while you're doing it. And that's why these guys have the heavy tag. So they're going to be quite a bit more survivable. The standard Legionnaires don't. They do, however, come with the Appalachian, so if you're already inside a town and you're dealing with enemy infantry, then these guys could help you out. I'd still say go for the Pioneer, because they have that heavy tag, and that really makes a difference. Next up, we have the Mistral anti-air team. These guys haven't been changed too much. Still 2625 meter range, 2450 against airplanes, meaning that against airplanes they're not likely going to be particularly useful. Simply because aircraft at the moment have generally far better range than what they need to get to, or than what they would need for these guys to get into range. If that makes sense. They're just not going to come close enough to your AA teams, unless you deploy these guys behind enemy lines. In that situation, it could work. However, they're a 15 km/h squad, which means that you're going to take quite a while with these guys if you want to flank something. Next, a reservist, just your average reservists. 10-man squad, militia trained, which means they're going to take a lot of damage, going to take more panic damage. Their accuracy with the FAMAS, interestingly, is as good as the standard infantry. So the Chasseurs with their FNP90, I don't think they're going to be doing as much damage with it. Well, in numbers, maybe. But then again, for the price of one Chasseur for 8, you can get 2.5, almost 3 reservistes. You're not going to be getting the NF1. You will be getting more warm bodies with a gun. And you're going to be getting more charges of the LRAC F1. So you could argue that you have a better chance of taking out enemy armor, but I'm never too big a fan of reservists. Next up is the Arima, the French Marines. These guys, with the FAMAS, the Appalachian, and the Mini-Me, and as well as a heavy tag, make for ideal frontline troops. Be careful how you bring them in, because you only have very few options for that. You have the Cayman, so that's the stealthy helo. You have the Panther, in case you want to drop them off very quickly. By the way, the NH90 is as fast as the Panther, I need to point that out. Also, just notice Cayman comes with 30% ECM. That's nice. They also have the option of going with the VAB 2013 if you want to keep them cheap, and if you don't mind the price tag to go up a little bit more and you're already engaging a town that is potentially entrenched with HEGMs, bring the Griffon, because with the APS your transports are much more likely to make it into the town in one piece. And finally, Sapeur, the French engineers. 10-man regular train squad, FNP 90, still terrible accuracy at, well, every range, 455 meters at the best, and just your standard napalm flamethrowers. Now, one thing you might have noticed is that their enemy, or that the French AA teams, the Mistral, are not very good. So we're going to have to make up for that somewhere else, and they do that in support. I'm going to come right to that unit. Do you remember the Auto, the Automagics? This is the bigger brother. This is the Draco. The Draco has a radar-guided Automalar 76 gun, which means that you will be targeted by enemy AA, or sorry, enemy seed. Your anti-air range is really good. 3,850 meters and even 4 clicks against airplanes. Accuracy 55%. That's very accurate for a gun of this type. Rate of fire is very good, and considering that every time you fire you have, let's say, a 1 on 2 chance to hit, with a rate of fire like this, if an airplane comes into range, you're going to be dishing out 3 HE every single shot. It's going to hurt an aircraft a lot. So this is pretty much what makes up for the French anti-air capability, or lack of it, in the infantry tab. And then interestingly, you can also use this thing in a ground support role, as it has the TOW 2. I'd be very, very careful using this thing as an AT platform, because it only carries 2 of them. They're guided weapons, which means no shoot and scoot. And while they do a lot of damage, this thing is much, much more valuable as an AA weapon. That is what you get it for, not this TOW 2. We have better anti-tank solutions. Anyway, back to artillery. We have the howitzer here, the AMX F3, or AU F3 if you want to be exact. You can see that this thing still maintains pretty good stats, 25 clicks, dispersion's alright, but if you want to hit something quite accurately, you can use the 3-round burst. Now, in order to use this one, you need to manually disable the main howitzer, otherwise it's not going to be using this. You disable this one, you click on the howitzer, you tell it where to shoot, and it's going to lob 3 rounds at the same target. And they're going to pretty much arrive at the same time. Keep in mind that these things take a longer time to reload than the standard howitzer. So once you've fired 1, maybe 2 of these bursts, switch back to the GCT F1 and don't keep it selected on the 3-round burst. But the 3-round burst is much more accurate than the main howitzer. Next up, another AA weapon, Roland 3. Roland, definitely in a good anti-air platform versus airplanes. Helos, it's alright, 2800. But keep in mind that if, for example, you're fighting China, like I showed you yesterday, you have the potential of coming up against a helo that has a 4-kilometer range on the on the HGM on it. And as such, it's going to be quite difficult to get an AA platform into its range before it kills you. This is definitely not one to use. You have better chances of taking it out with the Draco. But against airplanes, this is your friend. 70% accuracy, quite a lot of missiles with it. Just make sure you micromanage it, because that radar tag is, if you don't micromanage this thing and you don't turn it off, is going to give you away. So just turn it off if you're not using it. The Caesar then. Still very good range, almost 34 kilometers. Dispersion is very good, and it has that shoot and scoot capability. Just fire a couple of rounds and you're on your way at 100 kph off-road. Still, the amount of ammunition that it carries limits its mobility, in the sense that it has to stay quite close to a fob, because if you're not going to resupply it, then there's a very good chance that this thing runs out of rounds, which for a platform like this would be a big waste. Then we have the Crotale. The Crotale hasn't been touched too much. Its range against airplanes and helicopters was always quite good. What set it back a little bit was that 4 missile load, and it carries no spares. So while it is still quite a good anti-helicopter and anti-air platform, you still need to babysit it. The Crotale 2 is definitely a little bit better in the sense that you don't need to micromanage it as much because it comes with double the ammunition load. 8 missiles versus 4. Accuracy is better, and this is something I really like, this thing is a stabilizer, meaning fire on the move. Unfortunately, it is a semi-active, so if your launch platform dies, you're going to be in trouble, as the missile will not hit the target. If the Crotale NG was fire and forget, I'd be very, very happy with this weapon. Now the Draco I already mentioned. Then we have the Hades, Tactical Srb M. Very, very long range, 52.5 clicks. I know it's not as long range as the M270, but trust me, this thing will still do the job. Because very few maps have a range where you need more than 52 clicks. Maybe if you're trying to fire from one side of straight to the point to the other. And maybe one of those maps where you have that nuclear power plant in the middle. That might be an issue for the Hades. But other than that, this thing is going to deliver a lot of HE very accurately onto a specific area. And 19 HE, if it hits infantry head on, is going to kill them. Especially the 15-man squads, you might also kill those. And just don't try to use it against tanks too much, because they're going to shrug it off, as always. Next up, Leclerc Anti-Aérien, also known as the Anti-Air Leclerc. Don't take too much notice of the unit model. It is, in this unit model, I believe the chassis of an AMX 13, but with the HSS 831 AA guns. Not radar guided, fortunately. They have the DEF tag, which means they can shoot down enemy HEGMs to a certain extent. They will shoot them down, but last I heard from Spectre, they have a minimum range of 750. So if an HEGM or a weapon comes closer than that, they're not going to fire. It's like they need some sort of minimum guidance time. They're pretty damn survivable for an AA weapon. They have 13 frontal armor. Now that's not something that you find on most AA platforms. The exception being the Chieftain and the Challenger Marksmans. Those guys definitely have quite a lot of armor and a lot of survivability. But it's not just that sets this thing apart. Because the Crotale has no or virtually no armor and 15 points. This thing has 20 points of strength and a lot of armor to come with that. So your Leclerc is not radar guided, meaning you don't have to micromanage it. You can blend these things into a push. Keep in mind, their helicopter and anti-airplane range is not great at 2800 meters. And if you're firing on the move, you're going to lose a lot of accuracy. But these guns can take a punch. They can take quite a beating at that 13 frontal armor. And finally, the M270 Lrm. Unfortunately, no cluster munitions for the French. They're going to have to take out tanks in another fashion. They have still some tricks up their sleeve. But the M270 Lrm is mostly your just long-range HE fire support unit. There's really nothing to cover about this thing. Tanks then. A couple of the AMX 30s have been done over with. They're out of the deck. They've been replaced with some of the other units that you see here. Starting off, AMX 30B Furtif. This thing does come with a stabilizer, which for an AMX 30 is pretty unusual. Most of these things do not come with one, such as the AMX 30B Brennus. This thing has a decent amount of frontal armor. Again, mobility is the strong suit of the French, as this thing does off-roading at 60 kph. You have a main gun with quite a lot of punch. Keep in mind this thing fires heat rounds. That makes it different from most of the tanks, as it will always do damage against an enemy armor. Whatever the type, whatever the amount of armor that you're firing at, you're always going to do damage. The 30B2 Brennus, still pretty much a, I'd say, defensive tank. Because if I'm pushing, then I want a tank that can actually fire on the move. I don't want to have to stop and park that thing every time I want to pull the trigger. And that is not something that the B2 does, because it doesn't come with a stabilizer. The gun for 45 points does a lot of damage at 19, and it has a bit of armor, but I'd say use this thing as an ambush roll and then retreat, because at 70 kph it can definitely do quite a lot of fast maneuvers. Just fire off a couple of shots and get out of there. AMX-32 does come with a stabilizer, also very good accuracy. That seems to be something that the French have in common with all their different units. Their accuracy is really good. MX-40, slightly better gun, slightly more armor, and the speed, that's MX-40-40, MX-40-32. Speed is slightly better, autonomy slightly better by 20 points, 20 kilometers. And overall, if you have the choice, I'd say the MX-32 does the trick. This 1 point of AP is not really going to make that much of a difference, and neither is that 1 point of frontal armor. Then the ERC-90/TH. Don't look at this thing for the main gun. It's not that impressive. It's a 90mm, range at 2100, AP at 15, very little HE. But what you get this thing mostly for is as, I don't know how to put this, a very fast HEGM carrier? Something like that. This thing carries the Hot 3. It is a guided weapon, and especially if you're dealing with a lot of Russian anti-missile systems or a lot of Russian tanks, which do most of the time come equipped with their own anti-tank missile, then the ERC-90 is not that good. If the enemy does not have any HEGMs on their vehicles, then the ERC-90 can definitely help you out, because it can fire off this missile, wait till impact, it is guided, and then scoot off at 95 kph. Not amphibious, keep in mind you cannot just float this thing across rivers, but they're nice flanking units. The AMX-10 RCSB comes equipped with a pretty punchy gun. Again, no stabilizer. This is another ambusher. 60% accuracy is good, 16 AP is alright, although for 45 points I can get the AMX-32, which has 18 AP, adds slightly better accuracy and a little bit more armor. It also comes with an autocannon, and overall I'd say the only real thing that the AMX-10 RC has going for it is the smoke discharger, although that could also be on the 32 and we just don't see it. And it has a lot more speed. 85 kph versus 65. Other than that, I don't find the AMX-10 RCSB too interesting. AMX-10 RCR Triga. Interesting weapon. Also comes equipped with that Mecha L48, as well as a top attacking HEGM. Unfortunately, only 4 missiles at that, but they're fire and forget. They're top attack, which means you're going to do with 17 AP a lot of damage to an enemy tank. And they're fast. These things are going to be quite annoying to deal with. And even if you do try and fire an HGM back at them, they're going to knock it out with that CRCS Heavy. These, I haven't seen them in the field yet, I haven't tried them yet, but I think they're going to be quite potent. And then we're moving on to the Leclerc series. Now, the standard Leclerc is, I think what you're seeing here, the Leclerc Series 1. Except for the fact that it's been reduced in price to just 80 points. That's quite cheap for Leclerc. You're getting a very accurate tank, very fast, 22 AP, nice and punchy gun at that, smoke discharger, only 2 charges at that, keep that in mind. Autonomy is really good. Armor at 19 is okay. I'd say, again, use this thing in a shoot and scoot roll. Fire off a couple of rounds, make sure they hit, and they probably will, and then back off and let other tanks take the punches, because the Leclerc, this one, the Leclerc Series 1, does not really have what it takes to survive. Now let's say you're fighting China, and you bring out your your Leclerc Series 1. The Chinese bring out, the ZTZ-96. If this is a fight that you're doing, then you will do damage to the ZTZ, because you have 22 punch and he has 18 frontal armor. He is going to punch right back at you with 22 AP, against your 19 armor. So you're going to definitely take some damage from him. He also comes with the Laser Dazzler, potentially smoke screens. I'm not exactly sure about that. I imagine they do, but again, Wargame shows you only 3 slots. In a matchup like this, you could argue that the ZTZ would win. If you were fighting with a Leclerc against something that's, well, let's say a little heavier, the ZTZ 99A, you're going to have to be really careful. Really careful. This is not something that the Leclerc will win. And this is why I say use that mobility when you're trying to get out of trouble. Unfortunately, against this particular Chinese tank that won't work because they're just as fast as you are. So let's see what the French can deploy against that. And that would be the Leclerc 2. Now again, the Leclerc 2, let's say you're fighting the ZTZ 99A. It has enough armor penetration to go right through your frontal armor. You do have the frontal armor or the penetration to go through his, however, only barely. So every time he's going to fire at you, he's going to do more damage to you than you do to him. Now, in the long run, you might survive because you have a bit more strength, 28 versus 24. But I wouldn't chance it. Aside from that, you come equipped with a smoke discharger, potentially an APS, but it's not shown here, and the Norinco APS as well as the Laser Dazzler make this quite a unique tank. The Leclerc, I'd say, might need a small buff, but the one thing that sets the Leclerc Series 2 apart from the ZTZ 99 is mobility. What you can try to do is lure the ZTZ 99A into a moving battle, which is in your favor, because your stabilizer at 70% is better than his, which means that you're going to hit more rounds than he is, and that might just win you that particular firefight. Fortunately, this is not the end of the Leclerc series, because the Leclerc Series 10, or actually 20.1, has a bit more frontal armor, but just by 1 point, and the gun is slightly punchier. 1 point extra. 1 point extra here. 2 points of side armor. Back armor is still really low. And keep in mind, this thing has just 4 points of top armor. If you want to take out a Leclerc, attack from the top. It's not going to have too much to defend itself with. Other than that, it has the smoke dischargers, same as the Series 2. And I wouldn't be surprised if it has an APS, but again, it's not shown here. I cannot give any conclusive details on that. And then the Leclerc XLR. This seems to be the point where France realized that they will not be able to deal with enemy tanks such as the ZTZ 99A2 in their current form. So the XLR is the upgrade that you might be looking for if you're dealing with China. 23 frontal armor means that 24 AP will still hurt you, but not as much. And while the enemy tank has 22 points of frontal armor, your gun now has 25. Again, this is not the same price point, but this is the best that China could field. So I'm going to continue this comparison of, let's say you're fighting China with France. What would happen? This fight would be winnable, but every other tank would be quite a challenge. So make sure you keep these things alive. The Leclerc XLR. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if this thing comes equipped with a smoke discharger, but it's just not shown. And that's the last time I'll be saying that. Next then, Reconnaissance. This is the 13 Régiment de Dragons Parachutistes, which means the Parachutes Dragoon Regiment. Yes, I had to look that up. These guys come with the FAMAS Commando, very accurate, 50%. Nice grenade launcher on that, and the MG36, also capable in close quarters. Elite level of training, very good stealth, very good optics. They compared them, or they reminded me of the Navy SEALs. If we compare these things side by side, you're going to see striking similarities. Let's see where the SEALs. Here are the SEALs. Overall stats are virtually the same. They use the MGL 140, both exactly the same weapon. For some reason the French are able to stash 12 more rounds for that. Their saw is slightly better if you're looking at the French, the RDP. sorry, RPD. 55. Stabilizer, interestingly for the French, is worse this time than for the US. And the main weapon does a little bit less accuracy, but its rate of fire is far higher, which in the end gets you pretty much the same amount of suppression, comparing a 762 to a 556. So the French recon unit, definitely very potent against enemy infantry. And in that situation you could say, well, I might want to use these as my anti-infantry force, and not so much in a scouting role. The scouting role, we have plenty of other options for that. Such as the Alouette 3, hasn't been changed as far as I can tell. AML 90, just your flanker of sorts, but it doesn't come with a stabilizer. And that makes this thing quite limited in potency. I'd say use it as an ambusher, but keep in mind that 8 AP is not going to be impressing anybody anytime soon. AMX 10RC then. Nice mobile, good optics, 85 kilometers, 4 frontal armor, decent gun on it, 55%, no stabilizer. Surprise, surprise. I'm not sure exactly when France decided to mount stabilizers on their vehicles, but it's starting to become quite a pattern. And overall, 12 AP, which, as opposed to the AML F1 or to the AML 90's F1, is not a heat weapon, which means that it will not always do damage against enemy armor, as opposed to the AML. The AML will, if it hits. Overall, I'd say use the AMX-10RC over the AMX-90ML, because you can still harass enemy transports with this thing. Moving on to the Commando Para. Still your standard shock-trained recon squad. There's nothing really too special about these. Main gun, very good. The SG-542, their assault rifle at 60% is very good. Just don't ask these guys to fire that thing while running, as at 15% stabilizer they're not going to be too accurate with it. Still coming equipped with the LRAC F1 as covered, and the AA-52 can also be used in a close quarter role, but most of the time I'd say if you are trying to scout from a town, just deploy these and use these guys as a longer range force. Next up we have another new vehicle. This is the Brc Jaguar. Very interesting set of weapons on this one. It comes equipped with that 40mm autocannon that I covered earlier. Very accurate at that. 35% stabilizer. Aside from that, it comes equipped with the Missile Moyen Porté, that fire and forget, not top attacking missile, just frontal armor. 25. Fire and forget, you need to be stationary to fire it, but once you have fired it, you can immediately start moving again. It's just not as fast as I would hope it would be at 70 kph. For a wheeled vehicle, I'd say that this thing might be made a little bit faster. Especially when you're comparing it to the AMX-10RC, the AML-90. Units like these mostly come with a speed of 80 plus kilometers per hour off-road. This one doesn't. And at 70, I think it's going to need a little bit of love and might need a slight buff. Gazelle Cannon, or the Gazelle Canon, now comes with the 20mm M621. Overall stats are really nothing to write home about, and just don't rely on this thing to hit anything on the move. 15% stabilizer, at 240 rounds. You need to make these things count if you actually want to kill something. Hussar, I'm going to compare these things immediately to the Hussar Lanceur. You're looking at two different versions of the Hussar. These guys are more of a frontline unit, engaging enemy armor, and they do that very well with the RX-2. Range is okay at 1000. Accuracy very good, and AP hits like a freight train at 26. Interestingly, the AA-52 can be used in close quarters, but it is not to be used while running, as opposed to the Mini-Me. And the Hussar Lanceur, as you might have already seen, these guys come equipped with Commando Mortar. As such, they prefer to sit back a little further than the standard Hussar might, because these guys with a main weapon such as the FAMAS and the AA-52 for support are against enemy infantry, potentially at close range a little better than the Lanceur, which only carry the P90. Moving on to the heavily armored reconnaissance tank that the French use. This is the Leclerc coup franc. Don't mind the fact that this thing looks like it's carrying a very impressive gun, because it's not. It's carrying a 40mm gun. Aside from that, it has a Mark 19 grenade launcher, and it has a active protection system to defend itself against enemy missiles. Probably also has a smoke launcher. At 120 points I would want a smoke launcher on my vehicle. And I'd say that this is one of the most survivable reconnaissance vehicles that I have come across yet. At 23 frontal armor, this is just the Leclerc that had its main gun traded for good optics. As well as, of course, that grenade launcher. I'd say use this thing in a role where potentially you're dealing with enemy transports. The enemy transports will not be able to touch this thing as long as they're not using HGMs and as long as the APS doesn't run out. And with the CTA-40 and the Mark 19 you have a very good weapon set against enemy infantry. 23 frontal armor will survive for a long time, and even if you somehow get the side armor on this thing, for most vehicles that's still not going to be enough. Now sure enough, tanks will go right through it, vehicles not so much. Then we have the Vbl Mmp, still your exceptional optics reconnaissance vehicle. And then we have the Vbl ELINT. ELINT stands for Electronic Intelligence. This thing is capable of snooping out enemy AA positions. It's better at detecting enemy AA than any other recon unit, with the exception of SEED. The stats on the unit itself I don't think have been changed. The Vbl Mistral, as we know and love it, now comes with the Mistral 2. This is a change, because I believe that it used to have the same Mistral as the one that you're seeing here. The standard Mistral missile. Right now, it doesn't. This thing has better range against both helicopters and airplanes, and can quite nicely, or well, unfavorably, depending on what site you're playing, surprise your helicopter. Because at medium stealth, these missiles might seem like they're coming out of nowhere, and all of a sudden your aircraft goes down. Keep in mind, it carries 2 missiles less than the standard Mistral team. But hey, it's a recon vehicle with AA. What's not to like about this thing? And then we have, and this is another very interesting unit, the Vbl Mmp. Again, with that HGM that I already covered multiple times. Fire and forget, 130mm HGM, does a lot of damage. And with fire and forget and very good speed, you can just use this thing as a spotter, fire a missile, and be on your way. Don't even look back at the explosions. You don't need to guide this thing. This could make the Vbl Mmp an annoying unit to deal with. I'm not sure how the current meta is, as I haven't been playing that much, but I imagine that this thing could be quite annoying to take out. That is, if it stays at range. If you come at closer range to it, a tank round's going to take it out in one go. Vehicles then. Some of these vehicles are evicted from the Sport tab, such as these ones, the AML-60, AML-60-20 Serval, and the VPM 120. The stats on all of these mortars haven't been changed, at least not as far as I can tell. Next up, the AMX-10. This is just your transport, same for the AMX-10P MMP, as well as the AMX Hot. Actually, the AMX Hots? No, actually these two are not transports. These are the ones that you always used to have in the French vehicle tab. This one, again, with that Missile Moyen Porté system, it carries very few missiles at that. If this thing is indeed classed as a tank destroyer, give it more missiles. Because 3 missiles might just not be enough. Especially if you compare it to something like the Mephisto, which comes with 12. And yes, you get an autocannon, yes, you get a bit of frontal armor, but really? If you compare these two, I would take the Mephisto any day. Anyway, AMX Hot first. Just your AMX platform really with the Hot 2 missile. Hot 2 are not that good, at least not anymore. Yes, they still do a lot of damage. Their accuracy is alright, but no stabilizer. They're guided, which means that you have to sit still and guide them to the target. And with all the APS, all the smokescreen dischargers, and all the heavy armor, I think that the Hot 2 is just not that competitive anymore. The one role that you could conceivably get this thing for is where you're trying to overwhelm the enemy APS system. So you fire a whole swarm of Hot 2s at them first, And once all of those missiles have depleted the APS, then you come in with something like the Mephisto or the P4 MMP. And that's when you deliver the hammer blow to the enemy tank. Because that's when the Mephisto, which I never really used, really packs a punch. The Mephisto has the Brc F3r Lr, 2800 meter ATGM, top attack, fire and forget. Very mobile platform, 90 kph. The P4 MP also fire and forgets even faster, but it's not a top attacking. This thing carries 8 missiles versus 12. This is a very annoying weapon at a very cheap platform. And especially when you compare the stats of the P4 with something like the HOT, I'd say I'll take a whole bunch of P4s and you can keep your HOTs. Because the P4 has potentially less missiles, but let's face it, the AMX/HOT's never going to be alive long enough to fire 16 missiles. The P4 is not going to be surviving long enough either, but it will deal more damage, and when the AMX/HOT is still guiding its weapon to the target, the P4 is already, well, a couple of kilometers away. ERC-90 then. ERC-90, it's still very mobile, it's still amphibious, it still has a pretty good accuracy but no stabilizer. And while the gun is alright, 11 and 3HE is just not going to really win you any prizes, not in the meta of Ashen Shadows. And then finally we have the Vbl Mistral, same Mistral missile as I've covered on the infantry. Helos, some helos are transport helos, so just ignore those. The Celtics come with the Mistral 2, which is the upgraded Mistral missile, carries 4 of those, medium stealth, fast platform, and even comes with 10% ECM. Then we have the HOT 3, as well as the Triga. The Triga carries the Brc F3r missile, or the Para 3 missile. Very accurate, 65 on both of these weapons, with the difference that you could argue, well, the Brc F3r has less AP. Yes, it does, but it goes through the top armor of the tank. In which case, if you are dealing with, let's say, something like a Chinese vehicle, which doesn't come with too much armor, and for this comparison I'm going to say it doesn't have any APS, this thing only has 3 points of top armor. And against that top armor, especially, where is it? The Triga with 17 AP is going to do a lot of damage. It's going to go right through and almost one-shot the tank, if it doesn't do that already. So keep in mind that the Triga, with these missiles, fire and forgets, top attacks, very dangerous. They even have a stabilizer, so they can just dart forward, send a missile your way, and be on their way again. Other helicopters. The Cassiopi, I don't think it's been changed that much. I'm not sure if it always used to have 60% accuracy, but that is still really nice. 4 AP, 50% on stabilizer. Not so much an anti-tank transport or an anti-tank helo, but much more against vehicles and infantry. Puma 330H Pirate. This one, as an infantry transport, has the M621. Not very accurate. And finally we have the Tigers HAP and HAD, or the HAP and the HAD. HAD is the helicopter that's more geared against anti-ground warfare. Comes equipped with Spike ER. Very good range, 3,150 meters. Unfortunately not fire and forget. Very good accuracy, hits very hard. And this is going to be important, that you have all these HGMs, not just on the Tiger or the Tigre, but also on all these other helicopters. I'm going to show you why in the next tab. Finishing off the Tigre HAP, rocket pods, as you can imagine, the autocannon and the Mistral 2. Both of these now come with 20% ECM and good stealth. So they're going to be quite nasty to find, and even if you do find them and send a missile their way, they might just shrug it off through the ECM. Now, remember why I said, or when I said, look at the HGMs on these things and bring them into your deck? Here's why. The French do not have, mostly don't have an anti-tank aircraft. And I was quite surprised when I saw that. The Jaguar A, this one has a long-range seed missile, 35% ECM. It's very, very fast, 1450 kilometers per hour. Fire and forgets, fortunately, as your ECM for a seed aircraft is a bit lacking. And keep in mind that while this thing may look good, you still have to close, especially against the longest range anti-air platforms, a range of 3,000 meters before you're going to be able to get into range. And in that 3,000 meters, he will be in range. An alternative as a seed aircraft, and the only anti-tank plane that you get in this deck, is the Dassault Neuron. This is equipped with, unfortunately, a semi-active, not a fire and forget, semi-active 60% 30 AP weapon, as well as 2 seed missiles, which are fire and forget. They're the same Martel missiles that I showed you on the Jaguar A. It's not as fast, but it has very good stealth, and as such a better chance of getting closer to the target. A couple of fighters. Mirage 2000C. It's overall alright. Very fast. 1350 kph. 30% ECM means that it's okay for survivability. But keep in mind that the enemy might be sporting something that has a very high accuracy, which means that that ECM is suddenly not going to be coming into play that much. Mirage 2005. Better air-to-air missile. Speed is even better, 1600. This thing is a sheer interceptor. And with all that speed, it just doesn't turn too well, so you have a turn radius of 400. I'd say don't get this thing into a dogfight. Use that 7.7 kilometer range missile against whatever you're firing at and get out. Because overall, it's not too survivable. Then, the 2000-5 Mark II. Overall, it's got pretty much the same range as the Astra, as the long-range air-to-air missile. Its accuracy is slightly better and it does a little bit more HE damage. However, you only carry 2 of these missiles versus the 4 Astra that you have on the standard 2000-5. Short-range missiles are very comparable. It's really not that special. It's the R550 Magic 2. They're okay. That's all I'm going to say about that. But why the 2000-5 Mark II is 20 points more expensive when it carries 2 missiles less and has a little bit more ECM and less speed, I don't get. So this thing might need some attention. Next Mirage. This is the Mirage 3C Napalm Bomber. Not going to live long if it doesn't get some sort of escort against radar, because it only has 10% ECM and its speed at 900 is not very good. Mirage 5, still equipped with a lot of bombs. 8 400 kilogram bombs are going to make life very difficult on enemy infantry. Speed, same, 900. ECM, 20%. I would really love a French aircraft which has jammer pods. Mirage F1c T. This is another anti-tank solution. It's a cluster bomber, which means that to a certain extent you can dodge them if you're maneuvering them in a way that the enemy player just doesn't expect. You can at least get out from a little bit of that cluster carpet that's being thrown at you. But it's quite easy to take this thing down before it gets there, because it needs to get into a range of 3.5 kilometers, and you're going to be taking out this aircraft pretty easily before then. And considering it has poor stealth, you're going to see it coming a mile, well, many miles away. Finally, the Mirage 2000D. 3 1000 kilogram bombs, very high HE value. ECM's okay at 45%. Also comes equipped with 2 shorter range air-to-air missiles. Next, Rafal C, and I'm going to immediately compare that one to the Rafal F3r. The Rafal C is your sheer fighter. Medium stealth, 50% ECM, exceptional air detection. Very fast, 1200 kph. Comes equipped with 4 of those M1, is that M1 or Mica? I'm going to say Mica EM. 4 fire and forget missiles, as well as 6 short-range fire and forget missiles. Unfortunately, this thing does have a very good turn radius, 270 meters. You can outturn most of the targets. Then, finally, the Rafal F3r. This is a bit of a mixed bag. It's a multi-role aircraft as opposed to the Rafal C, which is a sheer fighter. But the Rafal C, nor any of its other brethren, get this particular missile, the Meteor. 12.7 kilometer range with 75% accuracy mean that this aircraft generally will not have to come into enemy range. This thing outranges any anti-air platform, so you can just have it circling over your base or slightly closer, maybe to the front line, and just lob a meteor at the target every time you see one, which has a very good chance of hitting the target as well. And if that's not really what you're going for, you need to kill something on the ground, then you just use the GBU-48 Paveway 2. Two of those, 5.6 kilometer range, very high HE value. I'd say that French needs the Meteor on some of its other aircraft. At the moment, it's putting pretty much all of its eggs in one basket, especially with long-range anti-airplane rolls on the F3r. It just doesn't have anything that sits somewhere in the medium at, say, 9 to 10 kilometer range. And I'm going to say medium, but of course that's a very long range and more than what most of the aircraft in Wargame Vanilla had. The thing here is that some of the enemy air forces do have that 10 kilometers. And if they detect your Rafale, then it could already get shot at while you're still trying to close the distance to get your own missiles away. Overall, France, as far as I'm concerned, still fire and forget. Sorry, not fire and forget, run and gun. Just get into range, fire those weapons, and get out as quickly as possible. Because most of the units, when they're on the run, have a bit of an advantage with a stabilizer. Not all of them, mind you. The gaps, or the changeover seems to be around 1990. It's like that's the year when France decided, well, let's put some stabilizers on these things, because we might need them. So yeah, I think they're going to make for a very interesting playstyle. I haven't play tested them yet. I will be doing that quite soon, I hope. And as soon as I have more video on that, I'll definitely show you. For now, thank you for watching. And once again, if you want to vote on a particular country to cover next, be sure to do so in the description down below, where it has a poll. And don't use a comment on this video. It's just going to get ignored. Thank you for watching. Hope it was useful to you, and I'll see you soon.